Okay, I'm kicking off. Glenn, I'm Mike Ward. I am the CEO at Shielded. Shielded is the engineering side of what we're building at Midnight. So I'm here with Glenn from Blockdaemon.
Right.
It's a pleasure to meet you, Glenn. I'll
Very
let
nice
you
to meet
introduce
you.
yourself more generically. So
Yeah.
your role, and actually, if you can help me, Blockdaemon is a big name in this industry. So how did it get started? What do you guys focus on?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So I'm Glenn. I'm based in Singapore, but I actually spent about 10 years here in Hong Kong before I moved there. So
Excellent.
it's good to be back home. It's my second home. I've been with Blockdaemon for about 4 years. I'm leading the charge for Blockdaemon for our APAC expansion, and Blockdaemon it's founded in the U.S. Back in 2017 is when the company was founded, and basically we wanted to back then solve the problem of how developers can actually access blockchains in a much easier way. And, instead of like spending time to host infrastructures, nodes here and there, and then they go out of sync, like there's a
Yeah.
lot of problem. But we would rather have our customers focus on building, right? So that's how the company started. And, fast forward to the previous bull cycle, obviously there has been a lot of layer ones that were emerging and proof of stake chain. And, we naturally kind of started running the validator nodes as well. And that's when we kind of earned our name for ourselves. And back then we were able to raise some serious capital. And we have Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan and Citi in the cap table. And yeah, so ever since then, obviously, there has been ups and down cycles. But more than ever, this year we have been focusing a lot more on the institutional adoption. Obviously the Genius Act, and looking forward to the Clarity Act passing as well, and like the large Wall Streets that are our customer, but also our backer. There's a lot of demand for tokenization and stablecoin. So I think finally, after so many years, the reason for Blockdaemon's existence is kind of coming to fruition.
Fantastic. Yeah, it's funny because I remember back in 2015, I was doing Ethereum user groups, and they had training on how to do a contract, and I went and I wrote a contract. I'm like, but how do I get this on the network? Like that concept was very foreign to me. It's like you have to have a node to
That's
get it
right.
onto the network, which was a very obscure thing coming from enterprise software. I'm like, I don't understand. What's the server address?
Yeah, absolutely. And the idea was basically cloud computing, right? So, now cloud computing is largely accepted. Nobody's going to say that, like regulation or compliance, I mean, a lot of the hurdles have been removed. But then, if you go back 10, 15 years ago, especially, like I think Asia in terms of the cloud adoption was probably a little slower than the Western
Yeah.
world. And, there has been a lot of questions about, hey, we had to get everything on-prem. Like now, there's AWS and, Google, GCP. Like, are we actually giving away like our data sovereignty to, the American companies or,
Yeah.
wherever they belong? So there were a lot of, question marks over there. And, I think it was kind of like similar journey for the node hosting as well. Initially the stubborn developers are like, I have to, run this. This is my sovereignty.
Yeah.
But, like we want institutional adoption. So, like whatever works, obviously security standard and compliance standard, has been always been increasing, and we had to just kind of go with where these traditional financial institutions' demands are. So I think the industry as a whole has been like upgrading to fulfill those kind of demands.
Yeah, there's always a bit of an irony though in a decentralized system, and I remember at one point it was something like 40% of the Ethereum nodes are running out of one data center in North
Yep.
Carolina, where it was located. How do you square that circle? So how does Blockdaemon, let's say you guys take over X% of the nodes, is it about control instead of operating it? Is that kind of
Yeah.
the reality of it?
Absolutely. I think Blockdaemon, we were able to provide a lot of economies of scale when it comes to running nodes. Obviously, like we're a pretty big node runner. I think we're running over 250,000 nodes
Wow,
globally now.
okay.
And obviously, we use AWS, GCP, Azure.
Yeah.
But I think our bread and butter is optimization.
Okay.
Geographically, but also like platform diversity as well. So we also use a lot of bare metal servers as well. And most of the time, if you have the scale, then deploying bare metal servers on data center is a lot more robust and resilient,
Yeah.
and also cost effective as well. So these kind of demands actually they come from our customers. Like when a large exchange, for example, or when a large asset manager, for the first time, they want to, invest in Ethereum and they want to start staking for the longer term, then they're going to ask all of these questions like, hey, there is the coordinated risk that I hear, that I read from somewhere. If you put all the eggs in one basket, then, you basically get slashed away as a whole, right?
Yeah.
So like, how do you mitigate that? And, obviously when we were first told that question, we didn't have the answer. But then, like we had to research and say, hey, it seems like, if you put, different, eggs in different baskets, basically across different geographies and different platform, then, like there's clear mitigation, in terms of that as well. And now, like, that question was probably asked about 3 years ago. We have a lot more like, robust and, advanced systems to prevent or detect or, mitigate all of these risks as well.
Well, that's, so you talk about institutional adoption. One of the big things with institutions that's challenging, and I'm curious in your view of this, is they're used to systems with clear SLAs, right? So I came from the database field before this. 5 nines is the standard. When you get into 5 nines even, it's, there's actually hours of downtime every year, right? So you don't have a 24/7 system. 5 nines still leaves you with close to a day of downtime, which is pretty crazy. How do they view a blockchain system? So you can keep a node up and running, but is that sufficient? Do they want the node under their control? Like, what does an enterprise demand in a blockchain?
Yeah, I mean, we would always advise customers to have vendor diversity. So,
Yeah.
Of course, we...
To have competition with you then.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, right?
Yeah.
But then, that's the only way to actually achieve the uptime of their liking.
Yeah.
And also, they have the legacy Web 2 infrastructure where, like you said, 5 nines, right? Which is quite difficult to achieve in the world
Very
of
difficult,
blockchain,
yeah.
right? Because there's a lot of dependencies, not just on the hardware itself, but also on the chains, the software that is running on the hardware.
Losing sync, so you got a network
That's
problem.
right. Yeah. So, like it's always important, and like customers demand it. So, even without us telling, there will be RFPs going out to a few of our competitors as well.
Yeah.
And on top of that, I think, more and more so these days, when we see large financial institutions, putting their tokenized U.S. Treasury or deposits and things like that, then they actually think of this as a holistic kind of project. They don't think like, node in one bucket,
Yeah.
key management in another bucket, custody in another bucket, like dashboard, like governance. They kind of take this approach as a holistic kind of view. So
Yeah.
from that perspective, I think, Blockdaemon has a bigger role to play because, now where we're headed is like, we're no longer just like a node infrastructure provider, but we have our MPC technology that is plugged into the network, and we try to kind of make it easy for these institutions to also go multi-chain as well.
Right.
Right. So yeah, I think that's where the traditional kind of institutions are headed to.
250,000 nodes, how many networks?
I think at one point we were running about 60 or 70 networks.
Wow. Okay.
But then, obviously right now the market is not that ideal. Like the long tail
Yeah.
are kind of suffering, right? And then, we are transitioning to become more like, institutional ready.
Right.
So, we are also optimizing over there as well. Yeah.
What does it take for institutions to adopt? I mean, this is the big question. Everybody talks about real-world assets, tokenization. What actually finally pushes them over the edge? It feels like there's been a lot of toes in the water for 10 years. And
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I joined the industry back in 2017, and I was based out of Hong Kong.
yeah.
And I don't remember how many, STO working groups, if you remember that term, STO, securities tokenization.
Okay.
Yeah. Now we call it like, RWA or like
Yeah.
tokenized, security or whatnot. But back in the days, everybody used to call it STO.
Yeah.
And, like there's, I think back then, people were in the camp whereby they would say, like we're blockchain enthusiasts, and there's the blockchain ethos, and everything is public, everything is decentralized.
Yep.
So why don't you put your U.S. Treasury onto my chain, right? And obviously there has been attempts, and the banking industry has been pushing back, and they were exploring different Hyperledger Besu or Corda. on like permission network, and there is clearly a big divide like in terms
Yeah.
of ideology over there, right? But then now fast forward to today, like when things are actually materializing, I think it's about like selective privacy and being able to adhere to the compliance rules that they have in the asset classes that they've been operating for over 100 years, for example, for banking industry. So the networks like Midnight coming out, being able to kind of provide that toggle, if you will, in terms of who gets to see what. It's not like black and white where you get total transparency versus like nothing at all, or it's could be somewhere in between, right? So maybe Mike and I we can share some information, but we don't want like a third person to actually see it, right? So to be able to kind of toggle that, I think that is what may have been missing in the industry as a whole.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned Corda because that's my old product actually.
Oh, wow.
So I spent a little over 5 years at R3.
Gotcha.
In retrospect, I was selling Novell networks in the age of the internet. If people remember back in 2016, it was a legitimate question: what would win, private networks or public networks?
Right.
Public won over. Open always seems to win over to me. It's the getting finance onto a public chain to me needs to be a draw for new top line revenue opportunities, not for bottom line cost savings.
100%.
And until we, and that's what we need to bring to them, right? Private networks were a bottom line cost saving, and the systems in finance are a lot more efficient than they're perceived to be by those outside of finance. They're not running paper around buildings, right? IT adoption is by far the highest in financial services. I mean, I remember from my time at Microsoft, there's something like close to 40% of all IT purchases. So they're big adopters of technology. They're not archaic. But if we can show them new things to do in an open system where people can innovate and surprise, I think that's what lures them on chain.
Exactly.
Privacy is a requirement. Corda was, that was our main feature, was privacy. And it's we did it in a very different architecture, a very different approach. I'm not sure that approach would actually work in a public network. It was more of a peer-to-peer system. But without privacy, you can't bring most documents on chain.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which means you rely on people off chain. So
Yeah.
the sooner we get native, the sooner we show people what's new and innovative and going to make them new money, not save them money. I think the sooner we get to that.
Yeah, absolutely. And 100%, back in the days, again, 2017, 2018, when people were talking about STO, like the debate between public network and private network, again, as you said, just, putting all the back office work into a permission network, to me, permission network, to me, that wasn't revolutionary at all. Like,
No.
I actually didn't like that idea. I'm like, why? Like, you have a pretty robust system. Like, why do you need that? But then, now, in 2026, I was just with a broker from Korea the other day, brought them over to Hong Kong to meet with like some of our partners. What these guys want to do is they want to tokenize Korean stocks. And there are, by the way, I'm Korean as well, so I understand, the culture and, the edge, the advantages
Yeah.
of, what Koreans can actually bring to the market. There's like 3 very distinctive themes about what the global people would like to potentially invest in or have interest in. So, these could be like the likes of SK Hynix or Samsung Electronics, from, AI hardware perspective. And then, obviously there's the K-pop, component from like K-pop demon hunters, right? So
Yeah.
there could be, certain investors that are interested in, getting some exposure over there as well. And then cosmetics industry. So say, for example, if you're able to tokenize, these kind of stocks, and, if there are regulated distributors on the other side, say, for example, in the US or in Singapore or Japan, anywhere, then, like basically you're broadening your scope from just being able to serve the Korean customers to anybody all around the world. And obviously, the network itself would have to support like, other type of, assets on there as well. Obviously stablecoin, but also like, maybe US Treasury, different type of crypto and traditional assets, then it becomes super efficient, right?
Yeah.
And then, once that is done, that's, let's just call it like the spot market, then you can actually, use some of these assets as collateral and, lend against it or leverage, on it and things like that. Then, that's going to, really bring potential revenue opportunity, like you said, to this brokerage house, right? So, we're seeing
absolutely.
that happening.
Well, and Corda itself's pivoted. It's now a brand for vaults. Vaults are tokenized assets, return that's coming off chain. So I think even they've pivoted now to an open system. I've got good friends over there still doing this work. But it's instead of bringing blockchain to Wall Street, they're bringing Wall Street to blockchain. They've kind of inverted the formula. So I think it could be a winning formula at this point. But excellent. It was really good to meet you.
Yeah, likewise.
Appreciate your time.
Yeah,
It was a great conversation. Thank you.
Yeah,
Apologies
thanks so much.
short.
No, it's all
Take
good.
care.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.